Good morning. Remembering an icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the trailblazing legal giant who became only the second woman ever to serve on the Supreme Court, has died at the age of 87, a towering figure who fought for women's equal rights from day one.
It contributes to the end of the days when women, at least half the talent pool in our society, appear in high places only as one-at-a-time performers.
Ginsburg, a key member of the court's liberal bloc through the decades, also a pop culture icon, the subject of books, documentaries, and movies.
65 years ago, it would have been unimaginable that my daughter would aspire to a career.
And while Americans mourn her passing, this morning the fight has already begun over filling her seat on the nation's highest court. Ginsburg saying on her deathbed the decision should be left to the next president. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's ready to move ahead. As a battle brews in Washington, we'll look back at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life and the legacy she leaves behind. Today, Saturday, September 19th, 2020.
From NBC News, this is Today with Peter Alexander, Kristen Welker, and Dylan Dreyer.
And welcome to Today, and thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday morning. It is a somber day. Flags are flying at half-staff here in the nation's capital, from the White House to the Supreme Court, all in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was small in stature, Peter, but a towering figure in American history.
Yeah, you're exactly right. 87 years old, but celebrated by a new generation as the notorious RBG. She dedicated her life to expanding rights, and her dissents, I think, were even more powerful because of the discrimination, the sexism that she herself experienced as a young woman and as a young lawyer. This was the emotional scene on the steps of the Supreme Court last night. Look at the crowd there, people coming to mourn, to pay their respects, their numbers swelling as the night went on. And as Ginsburg is remembered, attention is already turning to what happens next. Who will fill her seat? And as importantly, who will make that decision? Yeah,
that is the big question. Our team is covering all of it, from those landmark rulings to Justice Ginsburg's lasting legacy. But we do want to begin with NBC's justice correspondent, Pete Williams. He is outside of the Supreme Court on this somber morning. Pete, good morning.
Kristen, Justice Ginsburg's death ends one of the most remarkable careers in American legal history, and it means that the Supreme Court will begin its new term just 2 weeks from now with great uncertainty about who will put her successor on the court and how soon that will happen. In her final days, Justice Ginsburg herself weighed in on how that should work. The Supreme Court says Ruth Bader Ginsburg died Friday at her home in Washington, surrounded by family members. The court said her death was caused by complications of pancreatic cancer. One of her closest friends, Nina Totenberg of NPR, says a few days before Justice Ginsburg's death, she gave this statement to her granddaughter, quote, "My fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed." Justice Ginsburg was consistently one of the U.S. Supreme Court's moderate to liberal members. As first a lawyer, then a judge and justice, she believed the Constitution guaranteed women greater rights.
Over the course of now over 2 centuries, it has grown and developed so that more and more people are included in that concept, we the people.
Rejected after law school for a Supreme Court clerkship because she was a woman, she began her legal career as a law professor and pioneering advocate for women's legal rights, successfully arguing a string of cases before the Supreme Court that made it easier to sue for sex discrimination. It was President Carter who first appointed her to be a federal judge.
She has genuinely distinguished herself.
Then in 1993, President Clinton put her on the Supreme Court, making her the second woman justice.
It contributes to the end of the days when women, at least half the talent pool in our society, appear in high places only as one-at-a-time performers.
At her confirmation hearing, she clearly stated her support for the right to abortion.
This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity.
And as a justice, she voted to uphold abortion rights. She wrote the court's opinion putting an end to the men-only policy at VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, saying it was based on outmoded stereotypes. She joined the court's majorities in striking down the death penalty for juveniles and in ruling that, quote, death is not a suitable punishment for a mentally retarded criminal. She also voted to roll back Bush administration policies in the war on terror. A blistering opinion in a case about equal pay for women renewed her standing as a feminist icon.
We welcome today Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
She was nicknamed Notorious RBG, a play on a rapper's name, and featured in a documentary movie.
I am 84 years old and everyone wants to take a picture with me.
She married a fellow student in college, Martin Ginsburg. They had 2 children. Years later, she recalled receiving some practical advice on her wedding day.
It pays, Mother said. It pays sometimes to be a little deaf. I have followed that advice with only occasional lapses, not only at home, but in the places I have worked, and even in relating to my colleagues at the Supreme Court.
A passionate opera fan, she appeared in several Washington productions in full costume but in silent roles. Regular checkups and early intervention helped her recover from 3 surgeries for colon, pancreatic, and lung cancer. And doctors inserted a stent after discovering blockage in a heart artery. But a recurrence of cancer led to new rounds of treatment and hospital stays. And now the court's most powerful liberal justice is gone. There's no word yet on any public memorial for Justice Ginsburg. Chief Justice John Roberts called her a jurist of historic stature, a tireless and resolute champion of justice who will be remembered by future generations. Kristen.
And Pete, you lay out the stakes so well, including that right now there are just 8 justices on the court. So what does that mean from a practical matter for the court moving forward, Pete?
Well, the last time that happened after Justice Scalia died, we had a 4-4 tie with liberals and conservatives, and they basically punted on the most difficult cases. Right now, though, you have 5 conservatives and 3 liberals when the new term begins. Will they punt again on some of the big cases? You know, just the week after the election, the court will hear the big case on the future of Obamacare. So that's part of the uncertainty here, Kristen.
All of it right before the election. Pete Williams outside the Supreme Court. Pete, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
We want to bring in Michael Beschloss, an NBC News presidential historian, as well as Betsy West, one of the filmmakers behind the Oscar-nominated documentary, RBG. Good morning to both of you. Michael, I'll start with you. And as others have said of Ginsburg, she used to teach her clerks to keep it tight and get it right, so I will try to do the same. Why did she have such an impact, and how will she be remembered?
As doing so much for women's rights over the course of her entire career, and also for the last 10 years being the progressive leader of the Supreme Court after the retirement of John Paul Stevens. Plus, this is probably one of the most famous Supreme Court justices in history, which can't be said for most of them.
And Betsy, take us behind the scenes, because you worked on this documentary. You got to spend time with her. What was she like, and where did this strength that she had come from?
Well, she was a very quiet person, and yet she had a great sense of humor, loved to laugh. And I think at the core, her most important characteristic was determination. This woman was determined to do the job that she loved. She loved being a Supreme Court justice. She loved the law, and she gave it her all.
Michael, you know, this is an era where there are so many divisions in the way that we view our politics, and some of the best stories being shared about Ginsburg right now are about the remarkable relationship that she had with one of the most conservative justices, Antonin Scalia. What does that tell us about that sort of bygone era of politics?
They loved opera. They had a wonderful personal relationship, although they disagreed politically about just about everything. And that goes back to what the founders wanted. The founders wanted Americans to fight with each other over policy, but at the end of the day, we were Americans who loved one another. I hope that's not a bygone era, and it may not be on the Supreme Court, because even though there are very big ideological divisions today, there are some very great relationships among the justices now.
It is just remarkable to look back at pictures of the two of them together. Betsy, she became a wildly popular figure for this next generation of women. Why is that, the notorious RBG?
You know, I think that as Justice Ginsburg was writing these very stinging dissents to decisions that the Supreme Court was issuing, as it became more conservative, young women and others, progressives, really gravitated to the notorious RBG. The idea that this teeny octogenarian was speaking truth to power, there was just something so appealing about that, and it did catch on. You know, the T-shirts, the mugs. When we would go to film Justice Ginsburg giving speeches to law schools, I mean, the line would be around the block. People would say, oh, I don't have a ticket, I just want to see her.
You just remember that image. There was a period of time when you would walk into the court, you'd see these 8 men, and at the end, there would be this small, petite woman, but she was such a powerhouse. Michael Beschloss and Betsy West, we thank both of you for your reflections this morning. Thanks.
Wonderful conversation. Thanks to both of you. Well, there is a looming question this morning. Who will appoint the next Supreme Court justice? As we mentioned, Justice Ginsburg said she wanted the naming of her successor to wait until after the election. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is vowing to bring the president's nomination to a vote on the Senate floor now. NBC's Geoff Bennett has more from the White House. Geoff, good morning to you.
Kristen, good morning. The news of Justice Ginsburg's death sets up a potentially brutal and partisan nomination fight in the final stretch of the 2020 campaign and adds a new layer of urgency around the outcome of the election. Both President Trump and Joe Biden learned the news of her passing while on the campaign trail.
President Trump reacting with surprise upon learning about the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg Friday night.
She just died? Yes. Wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life. I'm actually saddened to hear that. I am saddened to hear that.
As word of her death sent shockwaves around the country, the president was speaking at a campaign rally in Minnesota, touting the importance of judicial nominations, yet unaware of Ginsburg's passing, even as a supporter shouted the news.
The next president will get 1, 2, 3, or 4 Supreme Court justices. Many presidents have had none. They've had none because they're there for a long time. They tend to be appointed young.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg stood for all of us.
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden speaking to reporters after returning from his own campaign trip to Minnesota Friday.
We should focus on the loss of the justice and her enduring legacy. But there is no doubt, let me be clear, that the voters should pick the president, and the president should pick the justice for the Senate to consider.
Ginsburg's death sparking an historic and heated political battle, with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell vowing to move forward with President Trump's nominee to succeed her, offering the president a chance to cement a rightward tilt of the Supreme Court for a generation. And with the election less than 2 months away, McConnell says the Senate will act to fill the vacancy, even though he spent most of 2016 denying a confirmation hearing to Merrick Garland, former President Barack Obama's pick to fill the seat left vacant by the death of Justice Antonin Scalia. President Trump's nominee will receive a vote on the floor of the United States Senate.
Meantime, former presidents are paying tribute to the late Justice. George W. Bush, in a statement, says Ginsburg dedicated many of her 87 remarkable years to the pursuit of justice and equality, and she inspired more than one generation. From Barack Obama, she fought to the end through her cancer with unwavering faith in our democracy and its ideals. He says of a nomination process, a basic principle of the law is that we apply rules with consistency and not based on what's convenient in the moment. And Bill Clinton, who appointed Ginsburg to the court in 1993, says this: her landmark opinions advancing gender equality, marriage equality, the rights of people with disabilities, the rights of immigrants, and so many more moved us closer to a more perfect union. Kristen, Peter.
Quite personal for Bill Clinton, who appointed her. All right, Geoff Bennett, thank you for that.
We want to turn now to NBC's Kasie Hunt. She covers Congress for us at NBC. Kasie, so the divisions in Congress, as you witness, are already so deep, and now you have what is really just a potentially combustible moment there. What happens now?
Peter, good morning. It is almost impossible to overstate just what a cataclysmic moment this could be for the U.S. Senate. They are already incredibly divided over President Trump. Senate Republicans have been under enormous pressure, as many of them are facing re-election, many of them facing pressure to potentially divide themselves from President Trump. They've refused to do that and come under intense criticism. So to have a battle like this one, Supreme Court nominations are always incredibly contentious, but just 40-something days ahead of an election, we are reaching new territory. Now, one question we're asking our sources and what we're starting to hear is that Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, might actually wait until after Election Day to hold a final vote. Now, there are some who would say, well, isn't that what Ruth Bader Ginsburg wanted? She asked for a new president to be installed before her successor was chosen. So why would McConnell wait until after the election? Don't forget that he's trying to keep the Senate in Republican hands. That's another key question that's going to be at stake when voters go to the polls on Election Day. If this continues to be an issue that voters are focused on because the question hasn't been answered yet, that could potentially really energize especially religious voters, perhaps people who weren't comfortable with President Trump but have been lifelong Republicans and really focus on the Supreme Court as their voting issue. That could really help Republicans hang on to the Supreme Court. So I think everyone should keep that in mind as they watch how he makes these decisions and how this plays out. But we cannot overstate how angry Democrats already are because of the treatment of Merrick Garland. This is really, again, potentially a cataclysmic moment for the Senate here, Peter.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of lawmakers held to account for some of their past comments on this very issue. Kasie Hunt, we thank you very much.
And we now want to turn to Chuck Todd, who is NBC's political director and moderator of Meet the Press. Chuck, good morning. Good to see you. We so appreciate your joining us on such a monumental morning. And let's pick up where Kasie left off, which is the politics of this. This now puts the issue of the Supreme Court squarely at the center of an already contentious election cycle. So what does it mean for the election, and which voters will it energize, Chuck?
Well, look, think about where we are in this situation. President Trump is behind. Senate Republicans are behind. They've been desperate to try to change the trajectory of this campaign. So there is no doubt in my mind that this is essentially you're going to see at least the party leadership, McConnell and Trump, believe, get everybody behind this idea, behind a pick. What I think I'm guessing that the president is going to end up doing Amy Coney Barrett. It's somebody that he already, a very conservative judge, lives in Indiana, somebody who I think they believe will fire up, particularly she's Catholic. The president would like to improve his standing with Catholics, particularly in the upper Midwestern states. So, look, I think the entire Republican Party is going to get behind this strategy because they believe, and I believe, Donald Trump was elected president because of the Supreme Court opening. Had there not been a Supreme Court opening, I'm not convinced Donald Trump ever wins a first term, let alone here fights for a second. However, Kristen, I think the left is so fired up to a point that I think the right ought to be careful here that this doesn't boomerang. I think if the president and Senate Republicans decide to ignore the virus, ignore the economy. I mean, check out how the United States Senate's running now. They can't negotiate for a relief bill, but boy, they can move things quickly to do a confirmation hearing. I just think this is very tricky politics here for Republicans. I really do. And I think they ought to be careful it doesn't boomerang on them.
Yeah, I think you raise an important point, Chuck. How will this impact the Democratic base? All right, Chuck Todd, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we will look for much more on the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg tomorrow on Meet the Press.